Greetings, mortals. Happy Halloween! From the WizWorld Live podcast, we've got something very special cooked up for you today. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a little bit different than normal, but also it's all the things that you love about the show and what you love about classic cinema. So sit back, relax, and have a hauntingly good time. My name is Amoines Franco, a wizard and talk show host. I've lived over 6,000 years. But those years have not always been easy. But by my side, at least for the past 500 years, I've had my best friend, my boon companion, my greatest collaborator, the immortal necromancer, Soren Summersbane. Tonight I was meeting him for dinner, and I was a bit nervous, for our mutual friend Gregor the Wretched had seen him leaning against a ruined tower, sobbing, demanding that his life story be caught on tape. So I found myself heading to a strange restaurant for an interview with the Necromancer. Hello, I'm here for the table of Soren Summersbane. Yes, thank you. Summersbane, how are you?
Thank you for coming to see me. I really appreciate it. How am I? I'm okay.
You're just okay?
Things have been... things have changed, You've been on this planet for so long.
It's true.
As you do, things shift and change in your priorities.
Of course.
You look back at the summation of your life and you ask yourself, did it add up to more than the years I took? I just don't know.
Goodness, I had no idea you were in such heavy philosophical straits.
Oh, let me guess. You heard when Mr. the Wretched was walking his barghast and he saw me crying up against the tower. Yeah. No,
he sent me a raven. He was a bit concerned.
Yeah, no, I talked with him a little bit after, and it's been my 500 year since I've been reborn as of last week, and I'm kind of having
I had no idea it was the anniversary.
Mid-millennia crisis at the moment.
Oh, hang on, our skeleton waiter is coming.
Oh yes.
Can I get you some blood to start?
Yes. I'll have the red.
Do you have any French blood, non-smoking?
Yes.
I'll have a glass of that. There he goes. Well, I was surprised. I guess I should have guessed from the restaurant. The grinning skull. I thought, well, this must be some kind of special occasion. But, where do you want to start? You were born, you grew up, or shall we go to the day that you were reborn into darkness, as it were?
Let's start with just shortly before I was turned.
Okay.
I was, at the time, I was just become of age, which, 1483 in Friuli, in northern Italy. Now northern Italy. At the time, we didn't think of it that way.
Right. It was just Friuli.
Yeah. Things were simpler. You wake up, you make sure that the wheat is ground. You make sure that the olives are still there and that the neighbors haven't attacked and tried to burn you, which happens rarely.
A daily check to run.
Well, you look over the wall. Are they there? When they're there, you just make sure that the town knows about it. And when they're not, you don't say a damn thing. And it's pretty straightforward. It's a pretty standard life you're living. You expect to die within 20 years. It was, there's something simple about it. And of course, I'd come of age at the time that was 14. Which was a big year. To be fair, that's the equivalent of what mortals call, maybe 32 modern standards. They just gave you a lot of responsibility.
Friuli was a particularly accelerated part of the world.
Yeah, it's brutal. You wake up.
It's ironic that there are some libertarians now who think that we should go back to setting it at 14.
Yeah, don't agree with that at all.
No.
But yeah, by the time I had turned 14, I had already run and operated a small brewery with my father.
Oh?
Yeah, just taking some of the wheat. Well, I mean, we called it a brewery. It was mostly just taking water and putting it into the wheat and then just kind of hoping that did the rest. We didn't have a great operation, and quite frankly, the business failed. But
Sorry to hear that.
hey, look, at 14, you've seen some things. Anyway, we had a lot of downtime back then. I don't think people quite realize it, but there's a lot less downtime nowadays than there used to be. You had whole weeks at a time where nothing really planned.
Weeks, really?
So,
I think unless you're in Germany, no one really gets weeks at a time.
I know. Anyway, we were in one of the lulls between the harvest season, and I was feuding with my father because he had taken on exorbitant debts for this new stein at the brewery.
For a new stein?
Yeah. We all shared.
What was it
steins.
made of? Gold?
No, it was ceramics.
Oh,
it's very difficult to actually do up here on the mountain.
I see.
Either way, I had like a little bit of wanderlust, I just been wanting to go travel a little bit, but it's too chicken shit to join a mercenary group, and I didn't really want to become a priest, though I had learned my letters in order to maintain that small brewery.
Well, yeah, you had to write out what styles of ale you were serving.
Yeah.
Can I ask, what were 3 of the styles you served?
Modern day, you would probably call the first one just a standard ale. So we could brew that at regular temperature. We did have a lager that was seasonal.
Wow.
Mostly only sold probably weirdly enough, in the spring, because we were able to keep them so cold during the winter.
I see.
And then finally, what modern day you call a saison.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's quite fancy.
Using the standard, just like a lot of wheat around. We've got a lot of lactobacillus up in the air.
I'm sorry. You were saying?
No, it's fine. Honestly, a lot of it would get watered down, quite frankly. So we weren't super into the taste as much as it was. We would sell it.
Was this to just thin out the inventory and keep it last longer, or just a preference?
No, it was standard practice at the time.
I see.
To add a little bit of water to any sort of beer. You got to remember, the people who we're selling to are landowners who are then using the beer for their workers, and of course they don't want them to have too much fun, so they would water it down. We wouldn't water it down.
Oh, okay. I understand.
You always water the wine at the time.
Well, you didn't want to go insane.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly.
Yeah. Undiluted wine leads to madness. I learned that from the Greeks, and I think they've been right the whole time.
Yeah, fair.
Just look at Francis Ford Coppola.
Ugh. Chaos.
Ugh. Anyways, hang on.
Here is your blood.
Thank you, skeleton waiter. He's just leaving. I guess he's. Yeah. Do they just sort of predict what we want here? Is that how that works?
They kind of know your wants.
Oh.
They infer it.
Why? Sorry, to go back to your wants, you said you were stricken with wanderlust.
Yeah, and I been kind of wanting to do some things. And at the time, I was praying to Saint Christopher, because that was the cult of the saints was way in at the time.
Sure. And I got to say, Chris in particular did not deserve what happened to him.
No. But the patron saint of travel, was hoping to maybe take some stuff to market. Not the big market, but the one that's like by Florence or anywhere else. Really, I hadn't really traveled at all. That's when I started having the dreams of me. Just wandering the path, just of endless fields with the Appian Way, just constantly moving. And it always starts off with you just going through fields of wheat, maybe some groves, sunflowers, things like that. And then eventually the landscape changes. Something you just don't remember anymore, and you stop walking during the day, and the stars wheel overhead, and the only thing that's constant is the cobblestones beneath your feet.
Oh.
And then you stop, take a break, and at the mile marker there's a small shrine. It's been erected to something. You don't know to what. It's been worn over time. The face has been worn away. Just a vague suggestion of a man. And then you wake up and you just ask yourself, why did I remember all that? Where was I going? And I had that for weeks and weeks at an end. And something just told me one day, I've got to try something different. So I started walking one day, just kind of, you had the extra time. I figured maybe I'll just do a little pack and get up to one along the ridge. And I got there. I just kept going. Then eventually
You just set out following the dream?
Following the dream. The most disturbing part was when I knew where I was going, because I had dreamt it. I'd walked these paths before, and even though I'd never really gone this far from my home, I was never afraid. And then I stopped following the road altogether, and I wasn't scared. I don't even think I slept, but it must have been days.
So you sort of reenacted the trance from your dream.
Exactly. Life and the state between dreaming and waking became more and more thin. And that reality bent. And next thing I knew, I was, my shoes had completely worn away. I was covered in mud.
Oh.
And I was sitting at the edge of a grove, a clearing in the forest, and all before me was bramble, and looming at the edge on the other side of the clearing was just a single tower, the kind you'd see to demark an outpost for a Roman road. Square, squat, maybe modern day, I'd say maybe 20 feet high, with a single, what would look like a single axis, like maybe like an arrow slit at the top. And
so no door at the bottom, you're saying?
Yeah. So once I had moved through the bramble, and for whatever reason, I bled not, even though my shoes and my pantaloons had been tattered away by the underbrush on the way here.
Sorry. So you were at this point completely bottomless?
Absolutely, just hanging brain at this point.
I see.
But
And
my shirt remained intact.
It's just so the top perfectly intact, the bottom nude but unharmed.
Yes.
And for
at the
our
time,
modern listeners, go ahead. Yeah.
It was the fashion at the time to have particularly long shirts. So it was like that risky business.
I see.
You know what I'm talking about? So you got the right angle, you saw it all. But at a distance, it just looked like I had a big old dress.
Or a tunic, as we called them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Now go on. I had to get that detail in everyone's head.
Yeah, and to be fair, pants at the time were pretty shitty. So
yeah, they were really more. You would put them on one leg at a time and then kind of buckle it all together. It was a big pain. Oh wait, there's our skeleton waiter. He's got.
Yeah.
Wow, he's bringing. Someone's been. Look at what he's brought you. It seems elegant.
Oh, it's a. Ooh, this is my favorite. So they take human femurs, right, and you slice them transverse. They take the marrow and they put saffron in. So it's kind of like a delicious ossobuco. And then they just do some nice risotto at the bottom. Just take in all the thing. But it's bones.
Wow.
That's why, when the whole place is bone themed, you kind of got to go with
Sure,
it
is very bone operated.
Yeah.
And then for you, sir.
Oh, it's a giant bowl of mashed potatoes. I mean, I can't say he's wrong. It's not what I would have ordered, but it is what I like. Thank you, skeleton waiter. Can I ask, try to break the story here. How does one tip and pay here?
You, at the end, there'll be a bag that floats towards you. You just put the payment.
Okay.
Yeah, you just put the payment in the bag.
That sounds good.
The skeletons, I mean, they're not really employed here. They're compelled to work here, much like the service industry.
just like Wisconsin would have it.
Exactly.
You're not employed, you are compelled. But I
Exactly.
am compelled to dig in, please. So now you're at this tower. You're half nude.
And I find myself at the base of the tower, and there's a kind of like the area around it. All the bramble doesn't grow close to it. Maybe we got like 6-7 feet between the base of the tower and that. And there's it seems like anything that comes close dies. It's just bare ground, and there seems to be any sort of plants nearby are kind of a sickly and withering. But the tower remains untouched by time, just kind of just this monolith just sitting there as though it was the day it was cut and wrought and put into place. Still there.
And you had no sense of wanting to turn back?
I didn't feel fear as much as I sought restitution. After months of seeing the same dream again and again, it just you needed to have something. And as I started to trace my hands over the edge of the tower itself, I thought this was the end. There's nothing going on. I must have sat there for a day or two until eventually I tried to turn back. And when I did, the bramble torn my hand.
Oh.
I dared not go any further. So when I came back and I leaned up against the tower once more, drank of my blood. And then the door appeared.
A blood sacrifice to open the door.
Perhaps that's why they put the bramble out there.
I see. I wonder if the bramble's sort of a code requirement that if you are going to have a blood door, you must have something nearby to let you generate some blood.
I feel like that's just good design. You know, it's like when people put door handles like sideways to denote pushing,
right,
and vertical to denote pulling. It's just a smart idea, like how you naturally would move throughout your space. And honestly, and when you're immortal, you got time to think about that kind of stuff.
Door design, yeah,
door design,
it's actually one of the primary
lines of
mental
egress. Oh yeah.
It's a way that we like to amuse ourselves, especially while we're waiting in a tomb or crypt. You got a lot to think about how to get out of your tomb or crypt.
Yeah,
the
you
doors
think about
better
portals
be done with
a lot.
Portals, yeah. So
anyway,
once inside, sorry, could you pass the blood salt?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Of course. Do you want any water?
Is there water here? I mean, this
feel like there should
blood
be
is
water.
delicious, but a little bit of water would be nice.
Yeah. Okay. I'll think of it real quick, and they'll swing by. I'm sure.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Anyway, so I open it up, and in the
thank you, Bone Waiter.
So after I go in, the first floor is it's two benches facing each other, and in the middle is like a small trough. That's the best way to put it. Where the middle has a large spire. It's like an obelisk, but functionally, I found out later, this is an older ritualistic location that I had not known about, but they currently actually had they found some evidence of it underneath the Circus Maximus still, but it's the cult to Mithra. So functionally, you would walk a bull in there, impale it on the spire, and then it would bleed, and you would bathe yourself in the blood.
I think it's high time that Mithraism came back.
You know what? Honestly, mystery cults, they were a lot of fun.
They were great, but we can't tell you about them. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. Sworn.
Not allowed.
But where the benches stopped, basically the entirety of the north or the furthermost wall was just steps that ascended up. And so I started to set my stuff down. stuff I had, like a small pack. And I just started to ascend, and along the bench there was a new pair of clothing and whatnot. So I donned those and ascended. And the geometry inside was it was a little bit bigger than the standard exterior of the tower would have imagined. And
Oh, I see.
the whole room was kind of suffused with a kind of ominous green light.
Oh, which at the time was not normal to encounter.
No.
Models, this is kind of hard to comprehend, but it used to be most light was essentially yellow-orange.
Yeah, it to me it kind of reminded me of lightning bugs that are not common now, but at the time all over.
They were
place.
everywhere, right? Well, there
So
was
it's kind of felt
grass
like
and stuff.
lightning bugs, just like this bioluminescence kind of floating throughout. So it wasn't insane to see, but it also was definitely unique.
Sure.
And once I got maybe like what you would imagine 2 stories to be like nowadays, there was a single study, just a well-appointed room. The most notable thing was that there was a polished mirror about the size of a man in the corner, which is at the
Wealthy
time
indeed.
any sort of like mirror was wildly expensive. So
Right.
it was pretty nuts to see.
Had you seen yourself in a mirror by that point?
No, polished pewter I had. That was about the best I got. So I do generally what I looked like, but what I saw was far more gaunt and closer to death than I think I wanted. So it turns out that walking for days nonstop without understanding what sleep is not great. And
Well, unless you're trying to lose weight.
yeah, well, okay, I did lose weight. That was it. But it was not like it wasn't a sexy lose weight. It was
Sure. It was an Ozempic look.
Yes, exactly.
Sallow and unwell.
Exactly.
I see.
But there in the corner was some fresh food and water, and the walls were wrought of again large block stone. What I didn't know at the time, but I do know now, was this was an entrance into the underworld. And by me eating this and drinking this food, I had basically accepted that I am dead and must never be able to leave Hades. But and so
that's how they get you.
Yeah, I ate the food, drank the water, and then I was stuck. But I had entered in during life, so I was not dead at the time. So that allowed me certain, let's just say, some like latitude, I suppose. So instead of me even needing to heed the call of other masters within the realm of Hades, I actually had kind of a little bit more time to myself. So I had access to this tower and basically had windows that saw into the underworld. I had no ability to go back into the world above. And so it's at this point that I started to explore the tower. Now, turns out this tower did have a pedestal with a book on it. And this book held the secrets of life and death. It was bound in human skin. And had kind of a will of its own. It sought a master, or at least someone to impart its knowledge to. And I, being a 14-year-old, and who could read and write, was the closest thing at the time that he could summon. And so I was summoned into the deep wood.
The book had summoned you.
Yes, this is what I kind of put together. And existing between life and death on the first plane of the afterlife, this book called to me, brought me down, taught me the secrets of life and death. And from there, I was always twisted into kind of the necromancer I am today. Taught me a lot.
Can I just say, all that lovely description going up to the tower, it is interesting to go yada yada yada. I knew the secrets of life and death.
Oh, I understand. It's just something like, do you really like? I don't know that anyone wants to know. And like, life. And
Oh yeah, I
death,
guess
like,
I already know them. It's not an essential part of the story. Listeners, if you want to know, well, you have to get summoned by a book into the woods.
well, I mean, look, if we want to start going down that path, like, I can absolutely start talking about the different layers of hell. I thought this was going to be about my life, you know?
No, it is. It is. No, it is. And
Cool.
I didn't mean to upset you. Oh wait,
No, no, no.
here's the bone waiter. He's bringing me more mashed potatoes. Nothing for him. Nope. Okay. All right. If you can picture it, listeners, I guess I never described the restaurant. Everything is made of bone. It's looks like
It's
an
an
ossuary,
Yeah.
essentially. The tablecloths are, though, just red cloth.
Mm-hmm.
I hope this is not bone weave. I guess it might be. And I've got two. They're crystal, but I can smell them. They are made of bone. It's bone crystal bowls with an enormous ladle-type spoon, which is difficult to eat with. I'm not complaining.
Well, it's
We're gonna
particularly
take you out.
difficult because the actual like bowl of the ladle is a lower jaw.
Yeah,
The
yeah, it does
mandible.
make it hard. Oh, the potatoes keep sort of falling through, but I'll sort it out.
Okay.
Sorry. It's okay. So you've been twisted, and your life has begun anew, as an unlife, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the hardest part, I think the first was coming out of the underworld for the first time, by
Had
using
time passed?
well, at this point, yeah, I had spent a bunch of time talking to the book, using the book. It was a lot like, have you ever seen that cartoon, The Page Master?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, it was a lot like that,
I was
except
a
you didn't.
consultant on Page Master.
Oh, good. Okay, great. That explains the accuracy. But yeah, that was the one thing we had. It was like that kind of experience. Except for they didn't
I
get like
see.
weird cartoony arms. They just kind of floated places.
Right.
And so he showed me the library of the dead, in which all all lives are recorded, if completely ignored, but they are all recorded among history and time.
And listeners, if you want to donate $10,000 or more, you can get your copy of the book from the library.
Um, yeah, so I read all these things. And eventually, when it was time for me to leave the tower, and we knew it was time because the book started expressing that, like, hey, you need to move on. It was kind of a weird thing of like, hey, you have to put a mark. You know what the world of the dead is. Now that you know this, you must go make the mark of the dead on life itself. So that is kind of like my goal, and it's kind of nebulous. And of course, you, in order to do that, you can bring people into unlife, and that's a lot of fun. So I thought to myself, I'm excited to do this. Kind of have that, like, tied my shoes, all that good stuff. And then in order for me to like go into life again, I had to travel through death. So
Okay.
the book killed me.
The
Officially,
book killed you?
yeah, with a, like, yeah, big old green beam just shot out of it, just exploded
Wow.
my chest. I died.
Wow.
When you die, just kind of, you wake up in an obsidian field with a shroud on your face, and you just kind of wait. You go, stand up. You got to go farther and farther to hell. The big secret is at the very end. All right, I'm not gonna tell you whether there's a feather or if you gotta like escape the crocodile. I'm not gonna give you that because that's
sure.
honestly, that's half the fun. Finding out's half the fun. At the end, they're gonna ask you. There's this moment, the final level of undeath.
Spoilers,
You-
mortals. Spoilers.
you have this option of, like, returning to oblivion or not, and so you just got to choose the not. Now, for most people, that's going to mean you're going to be a ghost. So not a lot of fun. But
No.
if you're able to and know the secrets, you can return to the world in flesh. That is what I did, and so I ended up finding because, like, you can see both life and death through through certain spells. So I just found a old duke who was dying in his sleep. When he
Sure.
passed, I like his final breath went out, and I went right back in and
You
lived out the
inhabited the
rest of his.
form of the Duke.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And I got to, and like honestly at the time it was pretty sweet being the duke, the kick-ass duke. Was able to, you can summon people, make them disappear, no one asks questions. The one thing to note is that if you do hop into that, you got to eat human flesh. That is the one thing.
That's the big
So
drawback.
eventually, yeah.
And for those listeners who are wondering, yes, this part of Summersbane's life story was ripped off for the films Heaven Can Wait and its remake Down to Earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that. So
Well,
yeah, that was it. So I spent some time
Mhm.
going in the minor nobility, traveling around. It was pretty
And
great.
now the form that you have now, is it
Yes.
like a version of your original body, or do you find yourself designing new bodies over the centuries?
Well, initially I started, it's kind of like getting into like PC gaming. You start off with a couple pre-builts, then eventually you want to kind of like change it up a little bit,
Uh-huh.
So I lived a life as a, honestly, it got really weird in the 1800s because people were dying all the
Why?
time.
Oh, sure.
And a lot of just extra body parts everywhere. Like you don't know
Oh.
how much like people loved using like cow gelatin, like lots of gelatin jellies,
Aspects.
and like at an industrial scale. And people had weird jobs like rag picker and lots of cesspools. I think people introduced sewers for the first time. It was kind of the Wild West for a necromancer. It was pretty great, I gotta tell you.
Well, especially when you were in the Wild West.
Exactly. Oh, that was also, that one was less fun because you had the Wild West actually remarkably sparsely populated. Yeah. So
Just sort of pockets of racism dotting the landscape.
yeah, exactly. And you're just kind of like, it's not so fun. But I honestly, I got into the Wild West around the speculation game out in San Francisco. So
Oh, sure.
I heard
that's
there was
right.
death out west.
You had the denim store, didn't you?
That's right. Yeah, I had denim. That was my big thing, and also helped start Anchor Steam. Bet you didn't see that coming.
I didn't, but that makes sense with your experience brewing, and that's why it's so watered down now.
Yeah, Steam beer. I don't know why they think that was a good idea. I did that just to see if we could do it.
Yeah, and now
But,
they own it.
Yeah.
Did you get pushed out of the operation? Like, do you still own a piece of it?
So this is the other downside of being a necromancer. Probably one of the reasons why I'm so kind of like torn about my 500 years is you have to remake lives constantly, and as a result, like all the lives that you end up living, you can't see them past your 50 years in them. Like you don't age. You have to deal with, or you could make a facsimile of aging, which is what I ended up doing. But at the end of the day, the people who you really wanted to live for, they're dead. So you kind of just have to change it up and do something else. Like I can't own a lot of stuff. I mean, I can now, but like in the 1800s and 1700s, people are like, you got to show up to be taxed a lot of times.
Oh, sure.
So people like, you own a plot of land, they're going to be like, wait, hold up. You were on this record for 50 years. This can't be right. And so like over time, now I just make it LLC. It's so much easier to be evil nowadays. Like they've really, oh man, the apparatus for evil has been so much more beneficial.
The idea of a corporate entity has been a real boon to the long-lived community.
Oh, absolutely. Holding companies, oh my gosh, it's great.
No, somebody's been, but I want to go back to something you said a moment ago, that the folks that you're living for keep being dead. It sounds like it's sort of like not only are you undead, it sounds like you keep dying in a way in order to keep living.
Exactly. And that's kind of like when I'm sitting here, I'm looking at down the barrel of 500 years and I'm just sitting and asking myself, like, do I got any more left in me? Do I feel like there's, do I want to open myself up to that loss of love? I've kind of enjoyed our little flippant time at the WizWorld Live where everything just kind of joyful and fun. But like, I don't know, I just miss the times when I could hop on a boat, fall in love, and gamble away a rich man's fortune.
What is there any reason you couldn't do that and keep doing the show? I mean, we recently resurrected people. We've been dead on the show. We've traveled. You've flown on the wing of a hawk.
Yeah, and we have fun doing it. I just, there's this beauty in the mundanity that I think being once you're out as a wizard, it's great. But who's going to maintain it? I feel like the things we've built over the last 5 years have become the very cage that I find myself struggling against. This flesh that I have built and wrought myself has ultimately been the thing that I don't know. I'm just talking here. I take a sip of my wine.
You have a sip of your blood. This is surprising. I never realized you felt trapped by the show.
I don't. I love putting this together. I do, but being lost in the woods is such a fun thing to do. Being lost in something, not building, just being.
Not building, just being. Because it's something that we could all learn to do. I think if mankind spent less time building and more time just being, things might be in a little more of a calmer place in general. That's not a bad way to think about it.
Yeah. Plus, I gotta say, like, as somebody who's worked for the evil side of things, I feel like maybe we've gone too far. Is it weird? Is that weird to say?
That the world is too evil?
Yeah. As somebody who's been a part of it.
I don't think that's too far to go. I think we could resolutely agree the world is too evil.
I mean, like, back in the day, it used to be like raid a village, have a good time. Now it's just an industrialized. It's taken the fun out of it. Where's the craft? That's what I gotta say.
Everything is so cheap, and private equity is the laziest form of evil I can ever conceive of.
It's not even fun.
No fun.
It's like what's the point?
Well, I mean, it doesn't that behoove us then? I mean, look, you've been part of making the world more evil. A lot of people have in a lot of ways, but to then go, I just want to be, well, what are you going to be in? Once private equity owns everything, once they've drained the last drop to put in a Coke bottle, once they've slain the last rabbit to put lipstick on it, once it's too hot to do anything, once we're living in eternal summer, do you really want to just be in eternal summer?
That's why I'm saying. That's why.
Well, that's why I think we have to keep building. We've got to build something to counter it all. And I know you want to just be, but after so many centuries of building the world that is, don't we have some obligation to build the world that comes next?
The only way to do that is to tear it down. Oh,
that's right.
I'm evil again. Thanks, buddy.
That's right. There is an evil way to build the future.
That's right. Hey, you know what? I'm going to say this. These skeletons, they don't make any carbon emissions except for I guess their initial decay, but they don't need food.
Are you pitching that we franchise this very dinner conversation into a chain of restaurants that are zero emission, fully locally or organically sourced staff?
Yeah, we've organically sourced the staff. You may recognize some of these skeletons.
I thought that short matey looked a bit like Wallace Shawn, but I couldn't tell from the bones.
Oh, I don't. It's hard to know from the bones. I don't know that they tell you.
It's hard to know. He could also be Danny DeVito.
Oh yeah, Danny's on his third body at this point, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Rhea keeps stripping the old ones. We don't have time to get into Rhea Pullman's necromancy. I'm sorry, listeners. I can't think of a more evil way to end this interview than having a business idea.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty brilliant. Well, Summersbane, thank you for inviting me to this dinner. Thank you for taking the time to put your story on the record. I hope the mortals who listen to this can take something from it. I hope this is enjoyable listening on the Halloween as they ponder what sort of restaurant chain with a vanity title might I wish to get into? How might I counter private equity by building businesses that are transformative and revolutionary, yet also profitable and sustainably organic? Well, Summersbane, as the dessert course comes, I see he's bringing you a cake and me more mashed potatoes. It's so hard to eat these here. Do you have any final thoughts? Any cap to your story? I mean, we have a lot of future ahead of us, but how do you feel having looked back, looked forward? Where are you at?
I think it's only natural as a part of somebody who just goes through life to sometimes mourn the things that have come before, knowing that you'll be moving forward without them. That's natural, and I think holding time for those things that came before you is very good, and that's a part of life as much as death is a part of life. So in the constant rebirth, you must also be prepared to die, much like capitalism deserves to die, and we should all just reborning it. Let's reborn it. Let's reborn this capitalism.
Let's reborn it. And as we decide to reborn, the skeleton waiter comes back over, and a bag floats along with him. All the other customers had seemed to have died hours ago, but we had so enjoyed our dinner, we scarcely noticed. Summersbane even paid for our dinner using flesh of other patrons. And I treated myself to a skeletaxi. The bones took me home through the cobbled city streets here of Mordheim. There wasn't a street, it wasn't a building that wasn't connected to some memory in my mind now. I had felt so much more energized of my own history and my own future. And when I finally got home, I told the walls, the living walls, everything about my dinner with Summersbane. Thank you very much for listening to this experimental, hopefully delightful episode of the WizWorld Live podcast. My guest, of course, was the one and only Soren Summersbane. Catch him alongside me every Friday night, 8 p.m. Pacific at twitch.tv/WizWorldLive. Find us all over social media as @WizWorldLive. Go to our website, WizWorldLive.com/shop. We've also got a book in the works. We've got a musical with puppets called Fishman the Musical that we're working on. The WizWorld is getting ever larger, and it's all thanks to listeners like you. If you enjoy the show, if you enjoy anything we make, please tell your friends. Spread the word. Grow the coven. See you next time. Good night.